That's right. In 2014, I sold Spaced Out Sound Studios to the Academy of Sound Engineering as a teaching studio. And so far, they've done a really good job rejigging the whole machine, making it work really, really well. I heard the demos of Falling Mirror in the car as Neelan and Alan had brought them to one of the gigs for me to listen to. And they played Time is a Thief, I Am the Actor, and James Dean, and I really liked the stuff. I thought it was melodic. I thought it was really brilliant. It was just acoustic guitar and vocal, very rough. So that's when we decided that we'd record an album. The first album was actually recorded with all of us in the studio at once, drums, guitar, bass, and a guide vocal. And there were no click tracks. We basically rehearsed the song 2 or 3 times and then recorded. Tape was very expensive in those days, and if there was a mistake, we'd just do it again from the beginning to the end. Alan would then overdub guitars and perhaps some piano acoustic, and Neelan would do vocals, and we'd add harmonies as required on the song. Previous to recording, we'd select a song like something like If I Was James Dean, and I would just change the arrangement very slightly, give it a new breadth here and there, a few chord changes just to get away from anything that was becoming a bit monotonous. In terms of the costs, I would bear all the costs of the studio. The band wouldn't pay for anything. It would be my time, and the percentage worked in the following manner. The band would get 1/3 and I would get 2/3 to cover that cost. This was the standard independent producers agreement all through the country and pretty much all through the world when independent productions were being done with musicians. There was never really any thought of any commercial success at all because we were purely doing it because we enjoyed the music. I had lots of other projects in the day that were funding everything from ads, Coca-Cola, Pick and Pay, all the big brands. So this was purely a hobby situation, and the band knew that we weren't doing this for any commercial reason, purely to get the songs down as we wanted without any sort of adulteration or making them commercial in any way. Neelan was particularly obsessed with money and success at the time, always asking, do you think this will make any money? Will we have a hit? And I was pretty honest. I just said, look, we do what we can, and if we get lucky, we get lucky. You can't guarantee anything in this business. Pat and Alan were sort of more realistic about it, and they were just playing for the love of the music. In terms of working together, it was always a great relationship. We never had any fights musically in the studio whatsoever. Things went incredibly smoothly. We were all on the same page. Neelan was extremely professional. Every time he would deliver a vocal that was pretty much right on the nuts, very few out of tune parts. In fact, I think if he did more than 2 or 3 takes on any of the vocals, that was a lot. Pretty much first time, so very professional to work with. Alan was a lot more anxious and sort of lacking self-confidence, but totally brilliant, and I just used to play the stuff really loudly and make his guitar really soft so he'd struggle to hear it, and he'd play the most brilliant stuff, and usually 1 or 2 takes. Sometimes he'd obviously want to redo stuff, and if it was not up to scratch we would, but most of the time it was take 1 or 2 as well. We wanted to keep things spontaneous. As I said to them in a meeting previously, the way I work is I have complete and utter control over the final product because I believe, you have to have one vision on something. You can't have a committee deciding things. Luckily, there was pretty much agreement on 98% of everything we did. Alan and Neelan were very easy to work with, very professional, no drama, no attitudes. In the studio at least. I think there might have been quite a bit of friction outside, but when they stepped into the studio, they were very focused and very professional. All the videos were shot on either 8mm film, as in the Making Out with Granny, which I literally edited in camera by counting the beats and stopping and starting the shutter. We had no editing facilities. And then sending it up to Joburg for resyncing of the audio. That went to the SABC and disappeared into a black hole. Or 16mm, which was what Neutron Bop was shot on the roof of the Plain Park building. That was edited down here and sent up to Benji. Unfortunately, we couldn't make copies of 16mm film either, so that went into the similar black hole. Regarding the singles or album potential of the band, we never really thought of that at all. It was always going to be songs, and those were the things that were important. We were very lucky in the fact that Benji Moody, who is like 1 in a million, liked Falling Mirror because potentially for success they were pretty disastrous in terms of costs and money and return. No album ever sold more than 1,000 copies, which barely broke even. And I don't know how Benji managed to keep releasing albums. I think he was persuading his bosses that this would be the next big one or whatever. But without Benji, there'd be no Falling Mirror. He was truly one of the guys, the A&R guys in the business that loved music more than money as far as I was concerned. We decided to do Fantasy Kid as a three-piece purely because it was very difficult to set recording times. The studio was incredibly busy in the day. I would occasionally get 2 or 3 hours free, and I would just phone the guys and say, come in and let's put down a song. So we worked with a click track, put down a guide, acoustic guitar and vocal, and then I would work on drums and bass and then bring the guys in again to do other parts. And it was all hours of the evening, the night. Sometimes we worked as late as 1 a.m. on it. As I say, at the time the studio was very, very busy, so there wasn't a lot of time. Patrick was very busy in his own business as well. And from a financial point of view, still no success and no money, but we all loved the music. After the release of Fantasy Kid, Neelan was becoming very frustrated. They had no money. There was just very little money coming in. And he eventually decided, in some kind of drug-fueled horror show or whatever he gets into, that I was stealing all their royalties. So he got hold of a lawyer, and I don't think Alan had any part of it. He was just sort of dragged along. But anyway, the lawyer had a look at all the royalty statements and actually told them that I was overpaying them, because in fact I just decided to split everything with them half because there was so little money coming in. So that was the end of that, and then they sort of went off for a while and did their thing, and I think it was probably a year later or so I got a call from Neelan, and he was very apologetic, and I said, look, it's fine, I understand, and the frustration of it, couldn't have been easy at all. So around sort of 1985, we decided to do another album together, and they'd brought some demos along. They all sounded pretty interesting. It was a sort of a concept record about Neelan's obsession with his chemist girl. And I liked the song Johnny Calls the Chemist, but it was very monotonous, so we rearranged it completely. I threw in a couple of key changes and chord changes, and it turned out some slide guitar, which Alan suggested, or acoustic, which came out really, really well. We put together the others. I had this whole concept of the opening. We were working digitally at that time now, using digital recording. So the signal-to-noise ratio was a lot better. We could be a bit more advanced in terms of light and shade. And that's how that album was put together. It was in a good spirit. Everybody was happy. They were glad to be back and recording and being creative again. And as I said, professional to the last. No fights, no problems. Everything went really smoothly. When the album was finished, I sent it off to Benji, not really expecting any luck on it, because, the record of Falling Mirror previous to that was pretty much failure in terms of commercial success. But he liked it, and he said he's going to persuade the guys to do it and put it out. So we waited for about a week while he spoke to everybody up in Joburg, and then he came back and said, yeah, we're going to go for it. So that was really, really cool. The sleeper hit was, in fact, Johnny Calls the Chemist, which turned out to be the one that everybody loved and the one that got a lot of radio airtime, which helped the album. Regarding the live gigs, I think there were several bands formed around Falling Mirror after that, sort of playing in various live areas. But that wasn't something that I was part of. I was more interested in the recording side. A couple of years later, the guys came back with some more demos for Hammerhead Hotel. I liked the title. I thought it was great. So when Neelan spoke to me on the phone, I said, what was the title of the record? He said, Hammerhead Hotel. I said, okay, let's do it. Not having heard anything, because I just liked the sound of it. Anyway, there were some great tracks on that. We did the same situation, basically played nothing to anybody, recorded the whole album. I wanted it to be quite rocky and quite hard. Sent it off to Benji, but unfortunately luck had run out this time. I think he had other bosses and people, and he came back and said he likes it, but unfortunately they can't put it out. It's just not financially viable. Regarding Special Agent Duck, I'd been working on microphone designs and building my own capsules and my own microphones for a few years, and I was interested in putting a project together to test it, and Neelan had called and said they've got a whole lot of new songs, would I be interested? And the album was called Special Agent Duck, which again I thought, that's a great title, yeah, let's do it. So I said, okay, we'll put it together, and got hold of Patrick Humphreys, because we thought it'd be nice to have the old team back again for one sort of swan song. And Patrick very kindly said, yeah, no, he'd love to do it. So we squeezed the time in between all our various busy schedules, and we put it down everything was recorded using the mics I'd built, from the guitars to the vocals to the drums. So it was a good test, and they came out really nicely. In fact, there were quite a few really good songs on that record as well. But unfortunately, no commercial interest, nobody wanted to release it. Around 2013, Sam Hendrickse came to me and said he wanted to do a film on Falling Mirror. His brother had found Neelan living under a tree in his house, and there was a whole story about it. So I said, sure, I'll help in any way I can. And the whole idea was to try and record some new tracks with the band. There were quite a few extra musicians because they were hoping to do a lot of live gigs. Alan was under a lot of pressure, and I remember him always being very, very stressed. Unfortunately, he died of a heart attack very tragically in the studio, actually playing guitar. It was just unbelievable. Sam Hendrickse organised a concert at the Baxter for Neelan with the rest of the musos. John O'Tate stepped in and played guitar, did a very, very good job. And the concert was very successful and hopefully raised a bit of money to help Neelan. In terms of a vinyl release on the latest material, I don't think it's going to happen purely because the financials just don't work out. There's just not enough of a core group to actually sell these records. So it's an unfortunate situation. I always believed Falling Mirror, one of the best, most original bands in the world, and in another country, in another time, perhaps it would have been huge.